Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to what you need to know about COVID-19 vaccine. I'm Shimon Webster. I'm the pastor of the Tower Prayer Church of Leeds, Alabama, the place where God is transforming lives. It is our initiative and it is our goal and objective this morning to bring education, to answer questions, and also to alleviate myths and possibly fears about the new COVID-19 vaccine. We do know that several people have already received the vaccine and are having different experiences. However, this morning I'm excited to bring to you a medical expert, Dr. Barry Collins, and he is going to talk with us this morning from a medical expert perspective and feel, and he's going to educate us about the COVID-19 vaccine. I am very elated and excited to bring him this morning. But before we do that, let's get some preliminaries out and let's tell you how this is going to work this morning. First, we want to let everyone know that education is very empowering. Therefore, we want to share our live this morning. So please make sure that you share our experience this morning. Tag some friends, tag some loved ones, because we're here to educate, to bring awareness to you and your family, so that we all can come out of this pandemic. So do us a favor and please press the share button, tag some friends and some loved ones. Whether you're here for the replay or not, we want to say welcome this morning. The scripture teaches us in 3 John 1 and 2, he says, "Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health." And so a part of that, the Bible also teaches us that my people perish for the lack of knowledge. And so when we match knowledge along with God's promises, I believe that we are able to make great advances in life. And so, again, we want to say welcome this morning. Great morning to all of you. We are super excited and very thankful that all of you are here this morning for this enlightening educational conversation this morning. So Dr. Barry Collins, he has received his medical degree from the University of Alabama at Birmingham in internal medicine. Dr. Collins is very active in the community and serves on several boards and communities. He currently serves as the chief of medicine at the St. Vincent's St. Clair Hospital, where he also resides on the advisory board. So we are really excited about Dr. Collins coming before us this morning. We also want to let you know that if you have any questions towards the end of our conversation this morning, we want you to type those in the comments and we'll be more than happy to get those questions answered to you this morning. Okay. All right. At this time, let us welcome and bring up Dr. Barry Collins at this time.
Good morning. Thanks
Good
for
morning.
having me on.
Yes, sir. Dr. Collins, we are super excited to have you this morning. How are you today?
Oh, doing just fine.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you again for this opportunity, so that we can educate everyone of what's going on, what the future is going to look like in the medical field, and also how we can be the best as we could be by being educated about this vaccine. So just give us a little background of where we are medically in this pandemic concerning the vaccine.
Okay. Says, of course, as you know, says COVID. Says we've been fighting COVID for says roughly about a year and a half now. November of 19 is when we first identified the virus. That says they're in China, and it was in January. But it says before we we identified the strand here in the United States. Since then, of course, our numbers have escalated to beyond belief. So now we're approaching 2 million cases. It says the pandemic is really raging out of control. Our hospitals are at capacity. It says we have very few hospital rooms left to treat patients, and just to be honest with you, we're running out of resources. So we're really looking for any help that we can get from the general public as far as containing the virus and making sure that it doesn't spread anymore. It says we've been in development of the vaccine for over a year. The vaccine, excuse me, first became available. About a month ago. It says in December. Currently, we have actually 5 vaccines in process. It says everyone knows about the Pfizer vaccine, which was the first, which is a 2-dose vaccine. First, it says the extreme cold storage limits its uses in certain areas. And then says, and then on the footsteps of Pfizer is the Moderna vaccine. Now it says with the Moderna, it still requires cold storage, but not as intense as Pfizer. Both of those are 2-dose vaccines. The third, which is says which is soon to be released, I want to say that says that would be the GSK version. That would be a single dose vaccine. So right now it's going through says FDA to see if it meets approval. And then we have says two others that says both of those are single dose. One is a single dose vaccine that does not require it says freezing temperatures, basically refrigeration storage. And I believe the fifth one is another single dose vaccine that says that just requires says refrigeration.
Okay. So I didn't know about the other two that are coming out. So
Yeah.
that is so when are those expected to hit the market?
Well, it says for one, says AstraZeneca's, it says that vaccine has been pushed back just a little bit. It says that's still a 2-dose vaccine that but only requires refrigeration. It says there was a little bit of questioning in the dosing as far as the first dose of the vaccine. So that one should probably be ready for approval by the FDA in about a month. And the fifth one says we still don't know exactly when that one's coming to market, but it's showing some promise. The efficacy of that single dose refrigeration dose is the issue that we're dealing with right now.
Okay, and I think this is a great question that had also come in. Why is it that you have to have two vaccines when you're taking the vaccine?
Well, it says for one, it says the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine are both new technology vaccines. In the past, how the vaccine works was we would take for lack of a better word, the hull or the outside core of the virus. We would take out all of the genetic material on the inside of the virus, making sure that there's nothing that could be infectious. And inject that into the body so that the body can make antibodies to the outside core, it says outside hull of the virus. Well, in these two vaccines, what we do is actually inject the messenger RNA into the body, and the body takes up that messenger RNA, produces the spike protein, which is unique to the COVID virus, and from there we make the antibodies. So it's a newer technology that we're using for this vaccine, and the way that works to ensure it says maximum efficacy. We do 2 doses. It says an initial dose and then another dose about a month later. The initial dose has been efficacious in a lot of cases, but we had to make sure that we knew the exact dose to give. So do we give a full dose both times, or can we give a smaller dose the first dose and a larger dose the second dose to make sure that we get maximal efficacy? And that's the reason why the AstraZeneca vaccine delay a little bit, fine tuning our dosing.
Okay, I think this also is a great opportunity and a great time for us to ask this as well. We all know that a lot of people in the African American community are nervous about the vaccine due to a lot of history, all the way back to the Tuskegee experiment. There's just some cultural, uncomfortable myths and thoughts about the vaccine in the African American community. Give us your feedback concerning the vaccine and the African American community and where we are right now.
Okay. First of all, it says I would do everyone a disservice by not acknowledging this, says that some of the fears are founded. The medical community has not done a great job in the past with the African American community. The Tuskegee experiment was a horrible chapter in history as far as treating African Americans. And there are some disparities as far as treatment with African Americans compared to our other Caucasian population. But in saying that, COVID-19 has hit our community harder than their community. There's an old saying says, when they get a cold, we get pneumonia. So our death rates are much higher than the Caucasian community because we're late to the party getting good. Says, and we don't want to miss the boat here on the vaccine. Says the vaccine is a relatively new vaccine. Well, excuse me, the technology is, as far as the vaccine, is relatively new, but we've been studying this technology for over 10 years in other avenues, as far as treatment of cancers, treatment of their autoimmune disorders. This is the first time that this technology is being used as a vaccine. It says, and I can say this: there are some side effects as far as allergic reactions in certain, it says, in certain people, but I can treat the side effects of the vaccine.
That's
I am
good.
helpless. I'm helpless, absolutely helpless. Once you get the virus, because I'm just along for the ride. I can help the body strengthen itself to fight off, but I'm nothing to fight the, it says, to fight the virus.
I,
So if we're
Carlos,
looking at, it
that is
says,
powerful.
yeah,
I
it
think
says, yeah,
that's a powerful statement. Yeah.
yeah. If I'm looking at the risk, it says I have treatment options for side effects of the
That's
vaccine.
good.
I've got nothing for the virus.
That is good, Dr. Collins. And I think we need to repeat that one more time. And I think that alleviates a lot of fears. And it also kind of just settles us into more of a comfort zone to even take the vaccine now. Because listen, let's repeat that one more time. Dr. Collins says he has the power to fix and to medicate side effects, but they don't have anything for this virus, for COVID-19. So it's better to take the vaccine and get your side effects treated versus not taking the vaccine and then going through and not having the
Yeah.
proper response to it medically. So
Right.
that's powerful. Change my perspective. I
Yes.
love that this morning. We can fix side effects. We don't have a solution just yet for COVID-19 at large. Another thing we want to ask this morning is, okay, if someone has had COVID-19 and they fully recovered, do they still need to take the vaccine?
Says, and the answer to that is absolutely. Says reason being is because we don't know how long you have the protection after you've had after you've had COVID-19. Says the antibody levels are inconsistent across the board. Some people maintain the antibodies to fight off the virus for much longer. Other people lose the antibodies and are more susceptible to getting it a second time. I have treated patients that have gotten COVID-19, says confirmed, says for a second, it says second infection. And the second infection is actually worse in a lot of these patients than the first, because any reserve that you had to fight the virus the first go round has been used up. So the second infection is much worse. It says me myself, I actually had the virus says back in August of 2020, recovered and still still got the vaccine. Matter of fact, I had my dose of the Moderna vaccine on Monday of this week. So absolutely, I'd wholeheartedly recommend people taking it. Now, the first 90 days after you've had the virus, you may not necessarily be eligible for the vaccine at that time, particularly if you're treated with some of the antibodies and antivirals. It says during that course. But if you've been infected greater than 90 days out, then absolutely you need to be vaccinated.
Okay. Now, also, Dr. Collins, thank you for that response. How long does the COVID antibodies stay in your system?
Says, and that varies from person to person. We know that over time, it says the antibodies gradually diminish. This says we've tracked them, and people that have had as the initial response and had antibodies 3 months later, the antibodies are no longer there in sufficient says concentrations to fight the virus. Now, even saying that, though, there is still some protection with the memory T cells. When the antibodies are gone, there's a memory T cell that's still left in your body that is geared so that if it ever sees that virus again or that protein, that it could ramp up your immune response says in an instant. So even though if you don't have the antibodies, there still may be some protection there. So that's the reason why there's so much unknown as far as what your level of protection is. And that's the reason why we recommend says getting the vaccine to make sure that you boost your immune system.
That's good. That's good. Also, Dr. Collins, how long does the vaccine remain effective?
So it says because it's a new vaccine, we really don't know. Just being absolutely honest, says the vaccine's only been in existence now for says for about a year. It says we're assuming that it says that it's going to last at least a year, and after the year point, we may have to look at getting a booster in order to it says in order to boost the immune response. So right now we believe that that it's going to be efficacious for a year, and then after that, probably another booster.
Wow. Okay. Now with the booster, now is that the same thing as a vaccine, or is this like
Yes.
a vitamin supplement booster? What does that mean?
Yeah, it says no. That's actually another. It says injection. Says of the vaccine. Says very similar. It says and it says and it depends on. It says and we're still working out the details as far as the dosing of the second. It says of the second dose of the vaccine. Do you require a half dose for it says for the booster, or will you require a full dose? That's still in the works as far as it says as far as what we're it says what we're looking at through the experiments and through our studies.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Collins, let's take a moment. And we got a lot of new people who have joined us this morning. And we want to say welcome this morning. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. The questions are flying in, and we're going to take those in just a moment. But we want to say good morning to you. I'm Pastor Shimon Webster of the Tower Prayer Church of Leeds, Alabama, the place where God is transforming lives. And we have with us this morning Dr. Barry Collins, who is a medical expert, been in the medical field for over 25 years now. So we're really excited. We're really excited. He knows what he's talking about. And listen, family, we all have been impacted by COVID-19 in some form or fashion. And guess what? We all know people who are being impacted because we're all in this together. This is not just for one group. This is not just for another group or another culture, another community, other races. No, this is everybody. And so we want to come before you this morning and give you medical insight, great information to alleviate fears, to cancel myths, and to empower you with knowledge so that you would know how you need to respond in the future and what you need to prepare for and what you need to do, and even possibly new measures that you need to take. Please do us a favor because we're here to make the world a better place through education. Please press the share button, tag about 2 of your friends or some loved ones because knowledge is power. I cannot stress that enough. Knowledge is power. The Bible even says that my people perish for the lack of knowledge. So knowledge is power. So please share this. Invite some more friends in. We're getting ready to answer some of your questions. I know a lot of you got revved up now and they're coming in like a flood, and we're getting ready to start taking those. Okay. Now we have, let's take a question from Sherry Moving Forward Taylor. She says, if you have recently had COVID, but you are still experiencing symptoms, is taking the vaccine safe?
Says no. Says at this point, I would say that if you're still experiencing symptoms, that I would wait until you're symptom free. It says now. It says in order to be eligible for the vaccine, it says you would be disqualified if you've had COVID within 90 days and received any of the antivirals. So if you've had COVID, it says within 90 days, I probably would wait until your 90-day period is up. Interestingly enough, that says after you've had it's COVID, there may be some protection for the first 90 days. So if there's any fear of getting COVID, says COVID, you should have some degree of protection up until that waiting period of 90 days is over.
Okay.
And it's not about safety as much as it is the efficacy of the virus. Says because your immune system is still relatively weak and you may not be able to mount the full response that you need to in order to fight. It says in order to produce the antibodies from the vaccine, would rather you wait until you're strong and healthy.
Okay, that makes good sense. Sister Taylor, I hope that answers your question this morning. Dr. Collins, before we take Lottie's question this morning, Lottie's up next. I have a question I think that a lot of people want to ask as well, and that is, Tell us about this second strand that's out. What
Okay.
what
Yeah,
does that mean?
it says that there's a different variant. There's actually two other variants that are out right now. One is the UK variant and the South American, South African variant. Says and those says those variants aren't very much different than COVID-19 itself. It's just more virulent, meaning that
Mm,
it says more aggressive as far as its spread. It says probably it says anywhere from, depending on, it says who you ask, from 6 to 20 fold. So if you come in contact with someone that
Jesus.
said that has that variant, says you're more likely to says to pick up the virus. And says and the variants also are affecting much younger populations. So before we used to think
Mm,
that COVID-19 was a problem for just the older population. Unfortunately, the new variants are hitting much younger ages, as says this says all the way down into teenage years and kids. So that's the fear of the vaccine, of the virus. It says it responds the same. It's just more virulent. It says and of course the lead-in question is the vaccine going to be efficacious against those two strands? Says the UK version, says variant is the new is has been out for a little while, and we do believe that the vaccine is going to be very efficacious against the UK variant. Against the South African variant, it says it's not as efficacious. This says meaning that it says if you have that, it says if you contacted that variant, it says you have a sixfold decrease. Says you have sixfold less antibodies with that. It says with that variant than you do. It says than you do the other. It says the other initial variants. But we still believe that the vaccine has been efficacious, as says, in those cases as well. But
okay.
again, time will have to tell on that one.
Absolutely. So we do know that it is in the USA, has not really
Yeah.
spread abroad, quite yet, but we are thankful to know that it is definitely effective for these two new strands as well. So this leads us to Lottie Connor's question. And Lottie says, do I still need to wear a mask after having two doses of the vaccine? And should we be double masking now for added protection?
Now, it says in saying that right there, it says I would say this. It says, do you still need to wear a mask? And the answer is yes, because even with it says people that were in the study that it says got the vaccine, still it says there was a small group that still ended up says contracting COVID-19.
Mm,
Although when they contracted it, it says their symptoms were much milder than if they did not have the vaccine, meaning that they didn't require hospitalization, they didn't require any aggressive care. It says they just more or less just felt weak for, it says, for 2 weeks while while the virus ran its course. It says the efficacy is pretty strong. It's about 94 to 96% after receiving, says, both doses. But wearing the mask, even with that less than 5% chance that you can contract the virus, you says you decrease the spread, so you may
mhm.
end up catching it, not feeling as bad, and still being able to spread the virus. So that's the reason why, for now, we still recommend wearing the mask. Now, wearing two masks, it depends on which mask you're talking about and the circumstances. I understand that Dr. Fauci was saying that says, yeah, two masks says would not be a bad thing. It says, and that goes back to the it says to the whole N95 type mask versus a regular cloth mask. It says the more barriers that you put between yourself and the individual as far as spreading the virus, the more likely that you are to spread the virus or catch the virus. So yes, that is beneficial. Says, but how much benefit you get from wearing two masks, it's really hard to say. If you have it says a good barrier, then two masks aren't necessarily. It says the answer there.
Okay, now that's good. Now that's good to know. Like if you have the real N95 mask,
Yeah,
that's a good barrier. But if you got the little thin little
yeah,
mask, the little blue little thin surgical mask, you
yeah.
need one more layer.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if it says if you have two masks, if you wear it, it says with below your nose, it says that does absolutely
Woo!
no good.
Still not doing
Just
anything.
on your chin. Yeah. It says it burns me up when I see people wearing masks and they just cover their mouth, their nose is
Yep.
open. says, or
Yep.
they wear it on their chin. And I was like, well, it says, might as well take the mask off.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So let's see here. I contracted COVID in April 2020, but I still have some lingering symptoms such as bad fatigue, bad headaches, and pounding of the heart. Also, I have two autoimmune diseases. Therefore, my immune is very low. Is it still safe?
Says yes. Says it says the symptoms that you're having after this says after COVID, you'd be classified as what we call one of the long haulers. It says patients in a certain group of patients, and it's hard to know because who's going to be a long hauler and who's not, can suffer from symptoms of COVID several months after their infection. And yes, it says your immune system is relatively weak, but still there's enough antibody there that should be able to help you out if you get the vaccine to produce the antibodies to fight off the vaccine. As a matter of fact, I would say that you would be in the high risk population, the high risk group, and says I would encourage you to be at the front of the line to get the vaccine.
Gotcha. I think this is a perfect lineup as well. Sister Carolyn Madden Hall says, what signs determine when hospitalization is necessary?
One of the big signs that say that the person needs to be in the hospital is oxygenation. You can buy these little monitors at the drugstore called pulse ox machines. It says they slide on your finger, they measure your oxygen levels, and when that number gets low, that means you're no longer able to fight it off at home. You need to be in the hospital getting some of the more specialized medications. Remdesivir being one of them, of course, our monoclonal antibodies being a second. It says, and of course, giving you the steroids, IV, and close monitoring at that point. So if your oxygen saturations get below 90, then for sure we need to seek medical attention at the hospital.
Okay, very good. Michelle Mostella says, when will the vaccine be available for immune compromised children?
Okay. For children, it says that's going to be a much harder question. How they're rolling it out here in the state of Alabama is in different phases. Phase one, that says there's phase 1A, 1B, phase 2, and phase 3. In phase 1A, it says we're just about to the end of, are the hospital workers, first responders, nursing home patients. Says basically the highest risk group that's there. Phase 1B would be says the group of populations that are over the age of 75. Excuse me, it says 1B is yes. It says 1B is this group says age 75 and older. It says phase 2, which hopefully we should enter within the next week or so. So depending on how fast we get everyone else in phase 1 says vaccinated. Says and that should be your high risk group. People with that are immunocompromised, have severe illness. And that's the next group. And then there's phase 3, which is the general population, and that's everyone. The vaccine has been studied in adults, but we have not studied it in the pediatric population for various reasons. One is, hate to say this, but we want to make sure that adults so that it's safe in adults before we roll it out to the children. And two, with children, their immune responses vary according to their age, so it makes it a lot harder to know to know, number one, which group to vaccinate, and getting the dosing right. Says for the pediatric population. So as of yet, we do not have a study that guides the pediatric population. So this vaccine is strictly for adults.
Wow. So it is a possibility for a moment, Dr. Collins, is what I'm understanding, is that it looks like sometimes we may be reopening up schools and these children won't have a vaccination.
Yes, that is exactly right. Says for the pediatric population, it says your studies are probably, it says depending on the manufacturer, 6 months to a year out before they meet approval. Because again, for the pediatric population, we want to be absolutely 100% certain, says that it's going to be safe in their developing bodies to make sure that down the road that says they don't have it says underlying side effects that we don't. It says we can't treat their bodies as small adults. It says their physiology is completely different than ours.
Wow.
It says, and when we're opening up the schools, all of the studies have shown that as far as the pediatric population goes, opening up the school is safe for the kids. Unfortunately, for the educators, it is not safe. That says you're putting them on the front line.
That part.
Yes, yes. So again, numbers are safe for kids. If they get the virus, then their complications are much lower than adults. It says they're much less likely to get to require hospitalization. And although there are some deaths, it says it's few and far between.
Gotcha. Now that's something that I did not know. We got a lot of questions coming in. I love this. We're going to take about maybe like 3 more questions. Is that good for your schedule, Dr. Collins?
Oh, absolutely. I'm fine. It says you have me all morning.
Oh, don't tell us that now.
It's okay.
All right. So let's take some questions here very quickly. I want to go up real quickly. Let's see. Let's answer this one real quickly from Lottie Connor, and then we're going to go down in our comments. But we're getting to your questions, everybody. I promise we're going to get to you. We're going to cut this off in around about 20 minutes. So we're going to do as much as we can in that time frame. Listen, if you're just now tuning in, we want to say welcome this morning. This is a webinar, basically, of what you need to know about the COVID-19 vaccine and also how you can remain healthy until you can become vaccinated. All right. So Lottie Connor says, I have one more question. Do I still need to wear a mask even with a face shield?
Absolutely. Remember that it says that the virus is spread through. It says not just dropules, but it's more like a smoke. So if you see somebody that smokes, if they're smoking behind a face shield, you still see the smoke drifting under and around. Exactly. So it's more like a mist that comes out. So the face shield is not going to stop that. So a mask will catch those virus particles. Yes, the medical masks have been designed and charged so that any material coming out, it sticks to the mask itself, doesn't spread. So a mask is much more efficacious than a face shield. The face shield more or less protects your eyes from someone sneezing or coughing into it so that you don't get it that way. But other than that, it doesn't offer as much protection as a mask.
Gotcha. Good information. I would have a little dialogue, but I'm trying to get to all these questions.
Yes.
Let's see. Vivian Mendenhall says, I'm allergic to a lot of things. What if I get hives after taking the test or the vaccine?
Okay. It says, and this is my response, because I've had that several times when people ask that question. Which would I rather treat? Hives or a horrible pneumonia that I have to put you on a ventilator for? I have Benadryl and steroids that I can treat treat the hives for. But if you develop that pneumonia from COVID, then my treatment options are a tube and strong high-powered antibiotics and hospitalization. So Benadryl at home for a rash, or intubated on a ventilator. That says I think that's a no-brainer. I'd rather get the rash. That says, and not have to go through that whole ordeal where somebody's blowing air into my lungs.
Absolutely. All right. Tara Rush Wilson says, my daughter was recently hospitalized for 28 days for what they believe MIS-C. Is it safe for her to receive the vaccination?
It says, I would say for her, again, it says I would give it about 90 days to let her fully recover from that hospitalization. And then the answer is yes. Because again, it says COVID-19 with those problems, says you're in line for some severe complications if you're in that population.
Good.
And in saying that, it's hard. It says when someone comes into the hospital with COVID-19, I never know who's going to do well and who's not going to do well. It says we treat. It says everyone the same, and then we just have to wait it out to see what happens. So even though there are some people that have no complication, had no past medical history whatsoever, says they do very badly, and there's some that have severe lung disease, and then make it through just fine. says, but you're more likely to develop those complications with
Mm.
this says with underlying medical problems.
Wow. And I believe Ms. Tara Wilson was saying that her daughter is 19. So
Yes.
this is very, very practical and powerful information. Listen, everybody, the world is a better place when we're sharing knowledge about this situation that we're in. And so we want to invite you again to press the share button, tag a friend, tag a loved one, tag a professional, tag someone that's on the front line, because we perish for the lack of knowledge. And so the more that we know, the more we are able to be prepared, and also how prepare ourselves to live life more abundantly by applying this information along with God's word. Faith without works is dead. So we have to make sure that we do our part, and God promises to do his part. So again, if you're just coming on, we want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. And we're super excited that you are here with us this morning. We're going to take a few more questions this morning. Sherry, moving forward, Taylor says, I've heard that I may be able to help others by giving blood plasma. Is it safe while I'm having lingering symptoms?
Says it depends on the symptoms that you're having. If it's just fatigue and a cough, then yes, it is safe for you to give the plasma. Matter of fact, you're doing the community a big service. One of the treatments that we give says for people that have severe COVID infections is giving them what we call convalescent plasma. People that have had the virus. And we're taking out their antibodies and using those antibodies in people in order to fight off the virus. And we're running into a shortage. We've had so many people that have had that have had COVID that we're just flat out of convalescent plasma to give these individuals. So yes, yes, it is safe, and and I wholeheartedly encourage you to do so.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's awesome. Okay. Miss Carolyn Middleton says a person with diabetes, high blood pressure, and thoracic surgery should they be in the first round to be vaccinated?
Currently that individual, depending on their age, is probably going to be in phase 2. Phase 1 is 65 and older. It says even with those risk populations, because the thought process was if you didn't have anybody that was around to treat you, then it didn't matter if you had. It says if you had the virus or not. It says you need those workers there. It says the nurses in order to provide care. So it said yes, you need to be in. It says you're in the high risk group. Yes, you need to be a priority. But as it stands now, you're in phase 2, which should be within the next week or two, depending on how the Alabama Department of Public Health rolls things out.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And the rollout for the vaccine in the state of Alabama has been a little bit more. It says a bit challenging, to say the least. says how they were phased in. Phase 1 was primarily at the hospital. So you heard hospitals having the vaccine, so they distributed to the hospitals first. Phase 2 says phase 1B is a combination of hospitals and the Alabama Department of Public Health for those. Says right now that the state says 75 and older, but really it should be it should be 65 and older, and that includes the Alabama Department of Public Health. So right now. You see the clinics, the health departments that are giving those vaccines out. Phase 2 is going to be primarily the Alabama Department of Public Health and pharmacies. So they'll roll out phase 2, and phase 3 would be pretty much anyone that any clinic that has the vaccine.
Okay. When do you foresee us moving into phase 2, where like the clinics, the Department of Health would have the vaccines?
So the Department of Public Health actually has the vaccines now for those age 65 and older. Okay. And everyone's calling the health department in order to try to get through. But I know in St. Clair County, there's a problem because we just didn't have enough workers at the county level in order to schedule and give vaccines. So now we're asking everyone to go to the website, Alabama Department of Public Health, and contact them directly in Montgomery, because that's where they're sending the schedule for people to be vaccinated. And there's several vaccination sites. Here in Pell City and in Moody. There's a drive-through site which they're scheduling. It says you can't. Just drive up and get the vaccine. You actually have to have the schedule. Have to be scheduled for it.
Okay.
Depending on our supply of vaccines, we should hopefully, it says enter into phase 2 within the next week to 2 weeks.
Oh,
But
good.
again, just
Very
that
good.
it says there are a lot of things that are going on with that. But we're asking the Alabama Department of Public Health to give those answers, and to be honest with you, to do a little bit better job as far as getting the vaccines out
Okay. All right. Ms. Wanda McCrimmon has provided a website for us. It is the alabamapublichealth.gov/COVID-19/vaccine availability. If you go to that website, you will be able to see the availability of the vaccine for the state of Alabama. We do know that our congregation and our audience is not only just for the state of Alabama. We have several members and several partners all around the world, actually. And so this is for the state of Alabama. I know Dr. Collins down there in Florida, they pass them out at Publix right now.
there. Yes.
So
Yeah. It says, and again, it says not to be hypercritical of our state, and it says, but we relied initially on Operation Warp Speed, and we thought that included a distribution plan, but it did not. All it included was just getting the vaccine and getting it to the states, and the states thought that there was going to be a federal plan, but there was no federal plan. So we're scrambling in order to try to get the plan in order and to get everybody vaccinated. And again, the availability of in our state also was hampered because initially people didn't want the vaccine and were a little skittish. So the interest in the vaccine was low here. So since our interest was low, our allocations were low. So that's what makes it hard in order for us to get that vaccine.
Okay. I think this is a great question as well. Can you get vaccines outside of my county?
And the answer to that is yes, you can, but it would be extremely difficult. It says the Alabama Department of Public Health is scheduling them directly, in your county. But if you're, working, if there's extenuating circumstances where you can't get back to your home county in order to be vaccinated and you're in that high risk group, then yes, it says you can get vaccinated outside of your county.
Okay, very good. We have a question from Stacy Bassett. Are asthma and epilepsy in phase 2? And where would we go around here to get vaccine? Does PCIFM have them? Is that is where I go?
Yes. I would love to be able to give the vaccine here in the office. But there's several reasons why we chose not to give it here in the office, and a lot of other physicians' offices are choosing not to. One is the extreme cold temperature that's required to store the vaccine. So that means you would have to purchase a different type of refrigeration unit in order to house that vaccine. Okay. So that's the reason why it says the health department and the hospitals and certain pharmacies are going to be distributing those vaccines. It says plus the tracking that involves ones that get the vaccine to make sure that they get their second dose. It requires a lot more manpower. So it's a lot more manpower than this clinic and a lot of other clinics have available. So that's the reason why the distribution is going to be through the Alabama Department of Public Health and through certain independent pharmacies. There are going to be certain pharmacies, like here in Pell City, Main Street Pharmacy is going to be distributing the vaccine. And they're waiting on their guidance from Alabama Department of Public Health before it's released.
Very good. Very good information. Thank you so much, Dr. Collins. Richard Garner says, how do we donate the plasma if we have had COVID?
What you'll need to do is go to any blood donation center. Any place that you'll donate blood is where you'll donate plasma. What they'll do is they'll screen you and test you to see if you've had if you have the COVID antibodies. And if you have the COVID antibodies, then they'll set your plasma to the side. And earmark it for hospitals as a COVID positive convalescent plasma.
Good. Barbara Bowling also says, Dr. Barry Collins, I have not had COVID, but could I donate plasma to help?
Says you can donate plasma, and you can definitely donate blood, which will help the overall overall health of the community. But without the antibodies, and having COVID in the past before, it probably would not be as beneficial to some of the people that are acutely being infected, because we need those antibodies in the plasma, says in order to treat those individuals.
Okay, thank you. Miss Champion Chapman, she has a very, very good question that I definitely want us to probably wrap up with. She says, is it true that if you have had COVID, that you can be at risk for future health problems that would not have been caused from having COVID?
Absolutely, it's true. We're finding now that it says that even if you've had no other underlying health problems, that your lungs suffer damage, and it says and there's certain and there's scarring that develops after the infection. So your lungs are almost as bad as a smoker's lungs. So you're more likely to develop other underlying lung issues down the road after you've had COVID. So that's the reason why we say, oh, I've had COVID, but my symptoms were mild. Yes, you didn't experience symptoms today, but down the road, there was damage to your lung tissue that says that your lung function has been decreased, and down the road says you may develop some underlying health issues related to your lungs because of that.
My Lord, my Lord. I think as we prepare to wrap this up, Dr. Collins, last question that I believe a lot of people would appreciate the answer to this morning, and that is, until I can be vaccinated, what can I do to stay healthy and COVID free?
Yes, I am. Brian says, because right now everyone is developing COVID fatigue. It's been out there for so long, and and people are getting tired of hearing the same message, but the same message still applies today as it did day one. Wearing your mask. Don't go out in public unless you absolutely unless you absolutely have to. Stay away from large gatherings. Large gatherings, are just a recipe for disaster. Always wear your mask. Wash your hands frequently. And if you touch things, don't touch your face. After you touch surfaces that you're not comfortable with. Meaning that you don't know that they're clean, and have been disinfected. And again, I understand that people have to work. We have lives to live, but we still need to minimize exposure from things that from risks that you don't have to have. COVID for me just got real personal. This week. My best friend just passed away 2 days ago. From COVID. And unfortunately he took certain risks that I didn't agree with. This vaccine came too late to help him. But hopefully it will help others, and to get that message out there. Don't take those unnecessary risks. There are places that you don't need to go, and if you don't need to go there, if it's just absolutely necessary, then let's not go there.
Say that one more time, Dr. Collins.
Yeah, it says people want to get back to normal lives, but if it's not an absolute necessity that you need to go somewhere, then you don't go there. It says basketball games, football games. Yes, I understand those are stress reliefs, but they play those games. And you can watch them on TV at home, and be completely safe. To expose yourself to that risk. And and more importantly, expose yourself to that risk and then go out in public after the fact and spread it to someone else is just still irresponsible at this time.
Yes.
We're still suffering from the spike from Christmas and New Year. And Thanksgiving, because I understand that people want to get together with family, and family is extremely important. But in this time, it says that you could spread those viruses. Some gatherings need to be curtailed.
Yes. I have a personal question. I think some more people would be very appreciative of this as well. What would you say medically, how comfortable are you even going to a restaurant inside to eat right now?
Restaurants are, and I say this with a grain of salt because restaurateurs don't want to hear me say this. But that's one of our biggest vectors as far as spreading the virus, because of course there's no way for you to wear a mask while you're eating in a restaurant. And if you're talking across the table to someone, then the virus is spreading. You're in an enclosed
Oh,
environment. If
Jesus.
you're if you're eating outdoors, then the risk is somewhat minimized. But indoors, it says the virus can be spread.
Lord.
And I say this, it says, to the detriment of the owners of the restaurants, because I understand that they have to make a living. But unfortunately, it says going to a restaurant right now is a danger and a risk as far as spreading the virus.
Lord. Wow. Dr. Collins, I also want to say we're very, very sorry to hear about your best friend who transitioned this week due to COVID. Our prayers go out to you that God will comfort your heart and that God would also comfort his family, and that we will all make just better decisions as we are dealing with this pandemic. You all, faith without works is dead. God gives us wisdom. God gives us wisdom, and we have to use this wisdom, even if it's at the sacrifice of our pleasure. Right now, we want to live. We want to live, and we want to see to our future. We want to see what God has promised us, and so the Bible teaches us that, beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. And so it's God's will that we prosper, and God has promised to be our healer. But because we live in a broken world, a sin infested world, it is not a perfect world. So we have to partner with God's word, exercise wisdom while exercising faith at the same time. And so just because we have to adhere to these measures from the medical world, from the World Organization of Health, it does not mean that you are faithless. It means that you are complying and doing what you got to do so that we can make it through this turbulent, unprecedented season. I believe that it is the church's job that we bring education to you. I believe that this is a part of the role of the church, that we make sure that we're just not having a Sunday morning experience, but that we are filling you with the information and the knowledge that you need so that you might live life and live it more abundantly. Dr. Collins, we cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us virtually for this webinar and give out all this practical information that you have given. I personally say thank you, thank you, thank you. If you do not have a physician, I'm going to go ahead and do a shameless plug. You need to go to Dr. Barry Collins. He is at the St. Vincent's Hospital with the Pell City Internal Medicine there. He's my physician. And so if you do not have one, if you do not have one, he didn't say it, I said it. If you don't have one, you need to go and see Dr. Collins. Dr. Collins, again, this has been absolutely phenomenal. We would love for you to come back again as we go into phase two to keep everybody educated and aware at the same time. So, Dr. Collins, is there anything else you would like to share this morning?
Well, it says, I should just like to echo everything that you said. It says again, faith without works is dead. It says, and there are several passages. God said, "Put faith in me," but it says, "But don't test me." So what? So every time that you go out and it says, and put yourself at risk of developing this virus because you're not being responsible and doing what you need to do, you're testing it. It says you're testing him. It says he will protect you. It says, but you're going to have to do your part.
You got to do your part. You got to do your part. Got to do your part. So, again, thank you, Dr. Collins. Thank you, everyone. Watch this, Dr. Collins. We got Patricia Johnson. She said, "What insurance does he take?"
Says to be honest with you, I'll take any. It says any and all, and even if you don't have any insurance. So yeah.
See there. All right.
Says it's not about money. We'll take any and all.
All right. There you have it. There you have it. All right. So again, we want to say thank you, Dr. Collins. Thank you to all of our participants and our viewers this morning. We appreciate you so very much. The comments are flooding in saying thank you, and we want to just highlight those for just a moment. Everybody has just truly, truly enjoyed this time this morning. Thank you again. Listen, do us a favor. Please press the share button one more time, because you never know who you're connected to, whose life just might be benefited and saved because of this information. So again, thank you. thank you. May God continue to bless you and keep you is our prayer. We'll see you next time. Thank you again, Dr. Collins. Y'all take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.